Let's go back to this conversation now. South Africa stands to be re-elected to the Aviation Governing Council, but just how significant is this when it comes to how our aviation sector is viewed across the world? Now, South Africa is pursuing re-election into the International Civil Aviation Council with a vote set to be announced in Montreal in Canada later this month. Let's speak now to Sindisiwe Chikunga, who is the Deputy Minister of Transport. Deputy Minister, thank you so much for your time this evening. You will be leading a delegation to Canada for the International Civil Aviation Organization, where, of course, South Africa stands to be re-elected to the Aviation Governing Council. What does this re-election mean for the country?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. It is very true that we will be leading the delegation, South Africa's delegation, to Montreal, Canada, at the end of this month and beginning of October, with the intention that South Africa will first contribute in whatever decisions that will be taken at that elective assembly, but also to ensure that South Africa gets re-elected again to serve in the ICAO Council. The Council is the working body of ICAO. When the Assembly takes decisions, then those decisions get implemented by the Council, which, like I said, work like the working body of ICAO. But also it is decisions and policies that get actually initiated at the level of the Council that then get presented to the Assembly. And therefore, if you serve if the country are represented in the Council, you are able to influence decisions that get taken at the Assembly, but also you are there to ensure that those that have to be implemented, they get implemented not only by other countries, but also your country, because you are there, you receive first-hand information, and they are able to influence that. And South Africa representing one of the voice of Africa, that voice of SADC, that voice of developing countries in the world. And it is that important that we form part of the Council of ICAO.
And while we, are gunning to form part as South Africa, as you say, in this significant body, let's talk about then what does it mean when it comes to South Africa's aviation standards and where our standing is as compared to the rest of the world?
The average performance of the world when it comes to civil aviation safety is at 65%. South Africa in 2017 performed at 87.39%. And it was just been audited again for security in the aviation. In 2011, we were already above 80%. When ICAO and the world was actually saying we'll achieve 80% in 2023, we're now looking forward to achieving, we are hoping that post this audit, we will be achieving something about, 90%, which is the target for 2034 in terms of what ICAO is saying. But this happens because we are there. We know firsthand as to what the standard and recommended practices of ICAO are, and we are able to implement. And we play that important role. Sometimes we even have people that become auditors, and that helps South Africa because we are there, we are making that. So in terms of our performance at world level and our performance in aviation safety, performance in aviation security, we are rated very high as South Africa. Like I've said, we've already achieved that which was set for 2023. We achieved that in 2011, that is aviation security. And in 2017, we were at 87.39, like I've said, when it comes to aviation safety. So we're doing exceptionally well. And that is why we are actually contesting for part 2 of ICAO Council. And part 1, as I've said, it will be countries that have chief importance in aviation. And part 2 will be countries that make largest contribution to the provision of facilities for international aviation transport or air transport. And part 3 will be countries that represent regions. We are in part 2 because we're making a lot of impact as South African contribution in aviation and facilities.
And how wide is the support for South Africa to be able to be re-elected here when you look at the continent?
One, like I've indicated, in fact, first we were endorsed by AU. So AU said South African states that are members to ICAO, member states to ICAO, will support one another. In part 2, for instance, from Africa, there are 3 countries. That will be South Africa, Egypt, as well as Nigeria. In part 3, there are about 5 countries, that is Ghana, Equatorial Guinea, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Mauritania. And therefore, all 53 African countries will be voting for these countries. But what we have also done as South Africa, to actually have bilateral meetings with the African states, with other regions in Europe, for instance. And when we had a breakfast with ambassadors and high commissioners or that are represented in South Africa, EU said that they've already endorsed the support of South Africa. So yes, we take what AU is saying and we're happy about that. The SADC and AFCAC, what they said, but we are not just resting on our laurels. We are engaging each country at a bilateral level so that we are assured of the re-election of South Africa, because this is very important for us to continue to serve in the Council of ICAO.
And it's going to be quite huge if really South Africa, as you say, is then re-elected. Deputy Minister, before I let you go, we're talking about a very significant, improvement, a very significant standard when it comes to issues around aviation. But I'm also keen to hear your thoughts on this one, because it is still in the same, aviation space. The South Gauteng High Court, for example, delivering a final liquidation order for SA Express. And this is something that has been described by some of the unions as the saddest day for the aviation sector, and it means that those who are hoping to go back to work for SA Express won't be able to do so. We talk about these successes in the aviation space, and yet here is this particular development this afternoon. What is your reaction?
It's unfortunate, but you will know that if you talk about aviation, it was and it has been impacted negatively by the pandemic. Remember, when we said there is no travel, it actually meant that, there are no aircraft that are moving from point A to point B. And therefore, everywhere in the world, this impacted negatively. Many of the big airlines are actually liquidating. But we are saying as South Africa, how best must we bring back that traffic that we had prior to 2019 and actually surpass that traffic, because we need. And we want to believe that some airlines will probably benefit out of that. It's never anything good, because remember, many even of our state-owned companies depend on the number of aircraft that land in South Africa. They actually pay some fares. And if they don't land in South Africa, it means they don't benefit anything from those aircraft. But we are hoping that as and when some get liquidated, there will be those that will take the space and probably be able to appoint and employ those employees that may have lost their work. We sympathize and empathize with that. But like I've said, if there is one sector that was hit hard by the pandemic and probably continues to be hit hard by even the war that is taking place and many other such, is the aviation. But we are there as South Africa to promote both tourism, aviation, and to actually, I'm so happy and excited that we have this interview, because many people in South Africa believe that aviation is for the elite group. As a matter of fact, the aviation benefits an ordinary person sitting there and selling those crafts that are there, selling those fruits to the tourists that can only come to any country through aviation, that can only use an aircraft to reach a space where the business people will come to a country from point A to point B. So yes, it's an important sector, and I think I'm happy that we have this conversation. I wish we'll have another one, even a debate for that matter at some stage. Thank you very much.
Let's see if we can talk then when you come back from Canada and see if South Africa was able to be re-elected. Thank you so much for your time, Deputy Minister, and good luck. Let's see then what happens. That's the Deputy Minister of Transport, Sindisiwe Chikunga.